As Penn Staters pick up the pieces after another heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss to a top-tier team and no national championship this season again, the question becomes, will anything change if James Franklin returns? Let's answer that question right now and how much responsibility he has at his feet for the loss to Notre Dame. But before we get there, remember to subscribe to the channel. Click on this button below me. We have DA deep dives throughout the college football postseason and the NFL playoffs, and we go live on Sunday nights to recap the football weekend. So make sure you are subscribed by clicking on this button below me and be one with the channel. If you watched Thursday night's Orange Bowl, you can't walk away from that and say that's James Franklin's fault. I mean, Drew Aller has to throw a bad pass into coverage at the end of the game that gets intercepted to set up the game-winning field goal. None of those things James Franklin did. But there are things you can point to and ask, when will Franklin get out of his own way? Let's start with a piece from The Athletic, because this was eye-opening, I got to admit. The press conference on Wednesday, where both coaches were on the podium, we had James Franklin take a shot at Notre Dame for not being in a conference. That's the headline that went viral that everybody talked about, including on my show. But there was another moment in that apparently fueled and informed what happened at the Orange Bowl on the football field. This is from writer Pete Sampson. Before Mitch Jeter's 41-yard field goal sent Notre Dame to the national championship game, Marcus Freeman stood before his team inside the Diplomat Hotel on Hollywood Beach Wednesday afternoon. Notre Dame's head coach had just returned from a final news conference before kickoff, the kind of throwaway media gathering usually forgotten before the last bowl trophy photo can be snapped. This wasn't one of those times. Not for Freeman, Notre Dame's head coach, whose youth had cut against the grain of what it takes to succeed in this sport of old guards and vintage attitudes. James Franklin decided to make a point about his counterpart. Franklin playfully asked Freeman how old he was, complimenting his hairline. He might as well have patted the 38-year-old on the head and told him what a good job he was doing, because that's how Freeman heard it, gritting his teeth throughout. And now Freeman was going to give that energy to a new source. His players could hardly believe it. Here's what Irish safety Xavier Watts said. He was angry. He was angry with the press conference. Whatever was going on between that, he was mad about that. All of that anger went towards us, and that anger went onto the field. You know, Franklin's so glib when he speaks. He is so emotional on the sidelines. He oftentimes kind of says the wrong thing at the wrong moment, and I think that helps build this reputation of not ready for prime time. That this incident, which happened kind of under the cover of everything else within the press conference about conferences and independence and all that type of thing, is somewhat indicative of the James Franklin problem. The little things that it takes to win a national championship, the little motivational tactics, the mind games it takes, the in-game adjustments. The fact of the matter is, this winter has been full on in Marcus Freeman's camp and not James Franklin. Freeman clearly on the same football field as Kirby Smart, a guy with 2 championship rings under his belt. Oh, Coach Kirby. And yeah, Notre Dame went up against a backup quarterback, but you saw multiple moments where it looked like Notre Dame was actually out-coaching Georgia, specifically on the will they, won't they fake punt in the fourth quarter and got them to jump offside. You could see how hard on every play Notre Dame played. And even when their starting quarterback went out, Riley Leonard, their backup QB came in and was kind of the jolt of offense they needed at the end of the first half. Then Riley, coming out of halftime, was a catalyst to help drive the field, punch it into the end zone, and tie the ball game up. All the little things that happen from an energy standpoint, from a momentum standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, it feels like Marcus Freeman has won the day so far in the college football playoffs. I remember when Franklin was at Vanderbilt, and The college football people that I know really well, especially in the SEC, raved about James Franklin and what a good guy he was and how he's ready for the big time and that Vandy can't keep him for long. He ends up going to Penn State and everybody figures this is a great hire. And overall, it's been a good hire. But how much of the rooting for Franklin happened because he's a great talker. He's a great conversationalist. And his attitude when he's doing press conferences, especially when there's no pressure, like at Vandy, gives you the vibe that this guy knows exactly what he's doing, that he's almost out-kicking his coverage by being at a school like that. But as the pressure built in State College, it feels like he's wilted, and that with every big loss, he becomes more tight. He becomes more constricted. What the benefit of basically kind of poking fun at the youth of Marcus Freeman is? Maybe it's just a conversational guy like James Franklin again, giving you a noogie. Hey, we're all a big brotherhood here. But didn't come off that way to a guy in that brotherhood. A fellow head coach thought it was condescending, patronizing, and fueled that anger into his locker room. Fighting Irish players said they didn't believe that Penn State respected them. And maybe that was conjured up. But you can understand how Freeman heard that shot from James Franklin and said, he doesn't respect me. He doesn't respect us. You saw how hard that team played. I mean, they got a running back with a knee brace, battling through every tackle, staying on his feet, bursting through the line, and absolutely taking on every defender in his way. That was the spirit that you saw from Notre Dame. The record of James Franklin against top 5 and top 10 foes. We all know the numbers. They're flash in front of us at every waking minute here. Do these 2 wins in the college football playoff erase the big game stigma of James Franklin? No, they don't. Because let's be honest, with an expanded 12-team field, if you were to seed right now the 12 teams that made the college football playoff, where would SMU and Boise State rank? The fact is, SMU and Boise State were not the equals of Penn State. And the Nittany Lions don't have to apologize. That was the road that was handed to them. That's how this bracket fell because of the seeding this year. However, the question is not whether Penn State under James Franklin can beat teams they're superior to. They do that every year in the Big Ten. The question is, can they beat teams they're equals to or inferior to? And the answer is still no. Hey, Franklin's won a lot of football games at State College. He's 101-42 as head coach of Penn State. In 11 seasons with the Nittany Lions, he's won double-digit games 6 times. They've gone to a bowl game every season except the COVID year, and including this season, they'll have finished in the top 10 5 different times. But one thing that I think hurts James Franklin is that Penn State never has a dynamic quarterback. The QBs under James Franklin in State College: Christian Hackenberg, Trace McSorley, Sean Clifford, Drew Aller. None of those guys are going to take your program and raise it to the next level. Throughout the game, it's really about game management. Don't screw it up. And yeah, there's a certain place for that in the Big Ten, but when you match up against the elite of the elite in big playoff games, in Big Ten championship games, and competing for national titles, you're gonna have to have a quarterback make a big play, unless your head coach is gonna out-scheme circles around everybody else. Guess what? Franklin's not that guy, and the Penn State quarterbacks haven't had that guy. So the combination of the two has left Penn State weakened in terms of competing at the very highest level. Franklin can stick around, but nothing's going to change unless they have elite quarterback play. With under a minute to play and deep in your own end in a tie ball game, play for overtime, is it possible that James Franklin should have said, no, we're not throwing the football here? Sure, that's Aller's decision and Aller's throw. It's just a bad one on both accounts. But what you can say about coaching is how Penn State lined up to try to defend/block the game-winning field goal. There are 9 Nittany Lions on the line ready to block this field goal. There are 2 set back. The season comes down to this. And instead of having 11 guys on the line to block this field goal, you've got 9. It just leaves you scratching your head, which is, I think, how a lot of Penn State fans feel about whether they'll ever win a national championship under James Franklin. Hey, before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel. Click on this button right next to me. And at that point in time, you will be one with the channel for DA deep dives like this one and reactions Sunday nights when we go live throughout the football postseason. Keep it locked right here. I'm DA, Damon Amendolara. See you next time, everybody.